Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN. Brian Winnikins at World Dairy Expo, and thank you to our expo sponsors, including UtterTech, also AMPI, Osteoplastics, the Wisconsin Farmers Union, and Credenz Seeds. Andy Grebner, your representative in Northwest Wisconsin. Joining us today is Dr. Randy Shaver. He's Dairy Industry Person of the Year for World Dairy Expo. We've talked with Randy before a lot about corn crops and that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And Randy, well, thank you for joining us. Well, to say it's been a challenging year is kind of an understatement.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brian. Yeah, it's been a tough year right from the get-go with the early part of the year, some very late planting, and then we followed that up really with some heat units to catch things up. But now as we get into the fall, we've still got a ways to go in some of that corn that got in so late, and some green corn out there. Not a lot of corn silage has been chopped yet. And now we've just got deluge with rain here the past few days, which will slow things down. So, yeah, all in all, it's been a very tough year. And I think as we look forward, we got to worry about when's that first killing frost going to come, and how's that going to impact decisions on do we take more and more for silage, or are we going to be able to wait a little bit longer and get some of that as high moisture corn and grain going forward.
Let's talk first on the silage side. With all of this wet weather and silage, the moisture content's probably way up there. Are there concerns? Are there some concerns that dairy farmers should be looking at when they're cutting that silage for when they use it for feed?
Well, if it's more than 70% moisture, you have a lot of seepage, and that silage can become quite acidic. So you'd like to let it in the field till you get less than 70% moisture. It may be wetter than what you normally do, but unless you're going into upright silos, as long as you're in bags or bunkers or piles, you should be okay. But you'd really like to get that to less than 70% moisture. One thing that you can do is you can chop a bit higher. If you raise that cutter bar from about 6 inches up to about 18 or 20 inches, you can take about 3 percentage units of moisture out of that crop. So that's one thing that can be done as people say, I want to get it out of the field. You can chop a bit higher and get that less than 70% moisture that way. Probably the big thing now is just when can we get into the fields. We've had some areas with obviously several inches of rain the past couple days, and so that'll be the big determinant. And then also just watching, as I mentioned, that issue of the killing frost, because once you have a killing frost, if it's very wet silage or very wet corn and you have a lot of moisture trapped in that corn cob, you can get mold happening very quickly and mycotoxins. So oftentimes that corn, you need to allow that to dry a bit, but then take that for silage. And waiting on that type of corn until it gets to high moisture corn or even beyond can be very dangerous, just because that husk is very tight. It traps a lot of that moisture, and then that mold, actually, that fungus develops from the inside and grows out into the kernel. So I'd be very cautious of that, particularly for folks that are still hoping to get high moisture corn. I'd be very cautious of that. Even though you may not need the silage, you may have to take it just to get it out of the field, depending on how this year goes from here on out, and put up more corn silage than maybe what you're used to or what you necessarily need.
We're talking with Dr. Randy Shaver. He's the Dairy Industry Person of the Year here at World Dairy Expo. You mentioned the killing frost and the corn for grain, and how that, depending on where you're at in the growing cycle, but for at least to be able to get high moisture corn, it's not the optimum, but especially from yield and that sort of thing, but at least it's something. How much longer do you think we have to wait? I know it depends on heat units and where you're at in Wisconsin, but on an average, how many more weeks do you think we have to wait?
So normally if you're at that half milk line stage, which would be pretty ideal for harvest as corn silage, to get to the black layer, which is pretty ideal for harvest as high moisture corn, it's about a 2-week period, give or take, depending on the soil type that you're on and then the dry down conditions. But if you're back in that early dent or roasting ear stage, now you're talking out, a month type time period to get at the black layer. And so that's going to be very difficult, just where we're at now on the calendar and what we could expect. So if you're thinking about high moisture corn, I would certainly hope that you're at the half milk line stage at this point, and then if you got a killing frost, you could hopefully eke out enough days to get that as high moisture corn. And you may have to take that high moisture corn a little wetter than normal. What you may want to do rather than combine corn is do earlage or snaplage, which allows you to take that a little bit wetter because you don't have to put it through a combine. So those are some of the things I think you need to be thinking about. And with all the rain we've had, at least through a lot of the state, we've got a few days to kind of think about that and look at some options. And for silage, it may be high chopping, for example. For high moisture corn, it may be, can you line up someone to do earlage and put it into bags as opposed to drier high moisture corn.
When you mention a killing frost, if the temperature overnight gets to 30, that really doesn't, yes, there's frost, but that really doesn't count, right?
You've got to be down 28 for several hours to really kill that, and sometimes you can get by with several light frost and not have too much impact. So it's truly when you've had that killing frost and those stalks die, and that's when, if you have way too much moisture in that ear, you need to make some decisions and likely get that off the field.
Finally, before we let you go, congratulations on being named a Dairy Industry Person of the Year here at Expo. Your reaction when you found out?
Well, I was very surprised. It's ironic because this is the year that I retired from the university in July, and I had a colleague in the department that put me up for the award in February of this year, and I certainly didn't expect to receive it. And when I found out about it, I was certainly very honored, but also very surprised. And the irony of being able to receive the award in the year that I retired from the UW was pretty neat. It was pretty exciting.
Dr. Shaver, again, congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
We're at World Dairy Expo. I'm Brian Winnikins on Real Country 1430 AM and 107.3 FM WRDN.